Welcome to the Delight and the Limelight show. Thanks for coming on and watching live or coming on to the replay. I'm your host, Linda Ugolo, a speaking confidence coach, author of the book Delight in the Limelight, host of the Delight in the Limelight podcast, and creator of programs to help you overcome your fear and delight in the limelight. And my guests and I are here to help you transform your experience of speaking from dread to loving it instead, whether it's on stage, on camera, in the media, or the meeting room. And today we're talking about how to speak about your successes at work with purposeful self-promotion so you can get the recognition that you're looking for. You can achieve the goals that you have set out in your life. And here to help me is Lisa Bragg. Lisa is a speaker, advisor, and author of Bragging Rights: How to Talk About Your Work Using Purposeful Self-Promotion. She's also founder of MediaFace, a thriving content and consulting firm based in Toronto, Canada. Previously, Lisa enjoyed a successful career for 15 years as a TV reporter and anchor. Welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to add to your conversation. And I love how our things dovetail. So it's so good. Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Because I think that one of the places where people lack, or some of us lack, speaking confidence is talking about ourselves. And this has a lot of, roots into how we're programmed in our life, how we're raised. Maybe that's a good place to start. Like, what are like in my work, I talk about the impacting past experiences, and there are impacting past experiences that affect how we feel about self-promotion. Can you dive into your view on that?
Oh, there's so many things of the past that hold us back. And so many of us are hidden gems because of stories of the past. And then we also have perfectionism. But I'll go to, perfectionism. I'll go to why we hold ourselves back and we're hidden gems. And so long we've been told that, put your head down, do good work, and eventually someone will notice you. And that's a lot from the factory era. We're in this really interesting time where we have social norms from the past. And then we're also supposed to live in this new era where we're collaborating or competing with each other, not just next door, but across the globe. So it's a challenge for a lot of us to have these old social norms that we carry with us. And then yet we're supposed to talk about ourselves, be out on the stage, presenting, and being able to tell people, hey, I'm over here on this tiny piece of the internet, come find me, instead of, wait, no one's still coming because no one knows I exist at all. So it comes down to moving past this factory era mindset. If we go way back, we have to realize that people actually did want to hear about successes. Right now, we hear so much about, in popular business media, talk about your failures, talk about your failures. But so many of us haven't been able to talk about our successes yet. So to talk about just only our failures, that's why people are burning out and they're so tired and the world feels so heavy, because we're not celebrating success enough. So
Can I
back in
stop
the day,
you
though,
right there? Because
yes.
you're saying so many things that I want to jump in on, and I thought I'm going to jump in on this one. So when you when you bring up that leaders are being asked to talk about their failures, I think that's when you get to a certain place, because they're being told you need to be more relatable,
For sure.
right?
They do. They need to be relatable, but they also need to tell people how they got to their success.
So
So many
others can
people,
follow.
so others can follow, because we
Mhm.
hear so often, oh, it was nothing, or yeah, here are my failures, but I don't leave the breadcrumbs to tell you how I got my success.
Right.
And so I'm trying to be relatable by telling you about my failures, but I don't tell you all about the things that happened along the way, or how you can achieve this too. Here's how you can achieve my failure, but I'm not going to tell you how you can achieve my success.
Mhm.
And success leaves clues, but we need to tell each other about those successes. So for sure, we want people to be relatable. We don't want people to be on these high horses and just only talking about their successes. We need to see that you're relatable. But so many people are afraid to say anything at all. They're afraid to talk about their successes. And so when they talk about their failures, it's just that much more. And it's really it's a trap for so many of us to talk about too much of our failures. And you need to set it up within context. And I talk about that in the book. It's context really does matter when you're talking about your failures, more so than I think success, more so than success. It just depends on who you're around, because what they hear, especially if you're putting it out on social media, people aren't paying attention enough. So if you're only putting out your failures, that's all people are going to see. So it needs to have, I think you need to do way more success stories than your failure
Yeah.
stories.
You also mentioned something in the book which I loved, and I can't remember the particular story, but it was about someone who said, "Go in as a 10, because if you go in as a 3," and you can fill in the details I'm forgetting. If you go in as a 3, then you have to work yourself up to where you know yourself to be, and it's a lot more work. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, that's from Vivian Picard, who used to work at the GM Foundation, and she started off and worked in all these different jobs at GM and would look around and say, well, they're no smarter than me. They're no smarter than me at each level, because her mom had also instilled in her the mindset of that you can do it. And so she was able to progress in her career and keep going further and further, because she realized, you know what, she wasn't daunted by the people around her after she realized, you know what, they're not that much smarter than me. So it's that self-realization there, but also realizing that every time she stepped in a room, and she's been a mentor to hundreds, I'm sure thousands of women, is that you come ready, and right away, so many of us think of it as just appearance, that we want to look good and dress the part and all that. But it's really your mindset coming in prepared to show up at your highest level. So many of us want to work up to that level. I don't want to show you everything, because that's going to be a high bar. I'm just going to ease my way in, and then I'm going to be a 10. And
Mm.
that's not good. And on the flip side, as a leader, I want to make sure that everyone who sees this new person on part of my team sees her as a 10 right away. So I'm giving her strength and trust, and not making her earn her way in, but I'm making sure that everyone sees her at the level she really is, so that they buy in, so that we're not spending so much time earning trust, that we're landing here and then we can only go up. Because I
Yeah.
think that's a failure of so many leaders, is that they make their new team leaders, their new VPs, whatever level, come in and have to prove themselves first. You've already
Mm.
done the work. You've already gotten the job. Let's start here and go here, instead of starting here to just go here in the end. So that's what I really promote in the book.
Right, which kind of, I understand why other people would do it another way, because they don't want, as you say, they don't wanna set the bar too high, they don't wanna create expectations of them that they're not sure in themselves that they can fulfill. And so how do you suggest people feel, own exactly where they are? I mean, this is how I feel like I'm comfortable wherever I go these days. I haven't always been this way, but when I realize that I don't have to pretend to be any more than I am, I don't need to say that I know more or have done more, but I'm just where I am and it's enough. How do you recommend to the people you work with
So I think it's a
to,
lot of, oh, sorry.
go on.
I think it's a lot of don't fake it till you make it. We know we don't know what we don't know. And I think it's being honest with yourself. So I think number one is some self reflection, and realize to take the time, like you said, you took the time to realize who you are and what you bring. So know how you are here to serve. So have that time where you take some self reflection and ask some hard questions of yourself, and really think about, well, how am I here to serve? And then realize that it's not always about that we have to have confidence, because we all want confidence and ready to go. But it's really about steps of courage. So when you have a step of courage to keep going and take another step of courage, and knowing that confidence is elusive. And that's why so many of us say we have imposter syndrome, which I call imposter experience, because so many of us experience it. But it's always that we're going along and it's an S curve. So we understand what we're doing, then we kind of dip back down. It's like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what have I got myself into. And then we get up and then we're in mastery. And then you know what so many of us do? We jump. And then we start all over again, because that's just the nature of who we are and this era that we're living in, where we keep raising the bar on ourselves and the goalposts, or all this new technology is changing the game so much too. So realizing that we're always taking these leaps, and that you have to have courage, but you get that through self-reflection, and always showing up, realizing this is how I'm here to serve, and this is what I have to offer. And knowing that we're all growing and learning together. I think those are critical things.
Yeah. I think that's really lovely. One of the things that I find with my clients is that it's like hard to get to that neutral state, because they have experiences where they were told they were they were not supposed to be where they were, that they were not good enough, that they could never be good enough. And I have found that it's really important to go back and heal those experiences so that people can feel like, of course I belong here. Oh, I got hired. I must belong here, rather than if you had a parent who was never satisfied with any award, with anything that you achieved, then you're going to feel like you're never good enough. And you're going to bring that with you wherever you go, even if others see you as competent. You may not have it yourselves. So it's multidimensional, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's great
Yeah.
advice that you give the people that you coach for sure, is really doing that reflection piece and that healing piece so that they can get to where they want to go. It's,
Mhm.
there's so much going on in this world, and there's so much going on in our own heads, hearts. And
Yeah.
so moving through yourself is
Yeah.
critical.
I am very intrigued. I know we want to move towards what we can do and how to self promote, but I'm very intrigued by what you started off with, that you feel that this idea of keeping our heads down, do good work, and you'll get noticed comes from the factory era. Do you know anything more about that? Like, why would that be relevant at that time, whereas it isn't now?
Well, most of us started off in agriculture. It was an agricultural society where we were just doing day to day work. And it's kind of funny because we're starting to get into that day to day kind of thing again. But we would just do what we had to do on the farm. And we would be surrounded by our families and working together in the fields or wherever it is. And that we wouldn't have this, we would be together. And so everyone knew what your strengths were and they knew what your weaknesses were right away. And so they could say, Lisa should not do that. Lisa should do that. So we could see that. And then we decided to move into factories. And some of it was some people didn't want to go, but they were forced to. We know that. And then we also know that some people went because there was a safety, because I would get a paycheck every week. And that there was something more to being in cities and in a factory place where there was some benefits to it. And then we also see, if you ever look at Charles Dickens, we can see how bad it was too. But it was something new that felt safer than where we were in this agricultural society. So I think that's what drew a lot of people in, is the stability of a paycheck. But that era also required us to comply because it was a new organizational structure. There was safety issues. There was also an abundance of human beings. And so many people clamoring for jobs. You didn't want to stick out. And I think a lot of factory owners back then, if they didn't have to think about you, worry about you, you're just the cog in the machine, then they could make more money off of you. And so that's a big part of it, where we're part of this era and swept up in it. And, we had that era, the industrialized era, for a long, long time. It was the third. And now we're sliding into the fourth and fifth at the same time, almost at the same time. We won't know until we can have some distance beyond us. But we're now in these eras that things are going so fast, but we're playing by these old rules. So I
Right.
think it's a lot to take in for sure.
Right. And I think that it makes a lot of sense when you say we're in this global society now, that we're interacting with people, not even in our own work space, literally in person, where we may be with lots of people, but with people who we're not even in the same physical space with. Where, like, you and I are here online, which is very cool on one hand, but it makes us need to share ourselves in a different way in order to be known and understood.
Absolutely, because if I'm just in my own office and in my own house, in my little part of the internet, no one's going to know that I'm here, because we're not bumping into each other as much necessarily at the water cooler or on the elevator or on the metro and the subways and the buses and things like that, where beautiful conversations just happen. And our grandmothers and usually grandmothers, aren't at the end of the street or going to the village square to buy anything, to tell everyone, here's all the awesomeness that Linda's doing in the world. You should see what she's doing. And they're not there to do that for us. And so
Yeah.
we need to then say, you know what, here's how I'm here to serve. This is what I want you to know about me. And, and keep giving. And that's the critical piece and the difference to the era. But it's that we are collaborating and competing with people all over the world. So what does that look like for you? And how do you let them know? Because when you let them know that you're here to serve, then they can say, okay, Linda and Lisa should do this, and they could partner, they can make something new and help the world in their own way. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, the critical piece to it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up the grandmothers because my grandmother had a superstition, and it was part of our culture, that you don't say too many nice things about your family or what you're doing because that would bring on the evil eye. So if anyone ever said anything to her like, "Oh, your granddaughters, they're so talented," she'd go, "Puh, puh, puh," like that, and to spit so that the evil eye shouldn't come down and strike us dead or bring some calamity. So I think that it's, probably goes I don't even know if that would be factor. I think that might be religious or cultural in some way of, not to don't we have Icarus who flew too close to the sun and melted? So I think it goes even deeper in our mythology, doesn't it?
It for sure does. It goes back as soon as we started to come together and we developed hierarchies in different ways that we would give everything to the leader, religious leader, or civic leader, whatever it would be. We would give it all away and also surrender a lot of our power with that. But with that also came security, comfort, community. And now it's a different world where is community? It's online or it is outside. It's wherever it wants to be. So
Yeah.
it's it's multidimensional. But absolutely, we have all those old what is the pride before the fall and all those things. I get them. Everyone brings them up because we start to bring them up. But that's part of all this legacy culture. And some
Right.
of it is good for sure. It does keep us in check, but it keeps too many of us in check. And it's the people who are hearing it at the frequency over and over again. And we hear that play small. Well, other people, they're not heeding those messages and they're loud and they're bombastic. And they're the people that we like, the self-aggrandizement of it all, where so many of us are the hidden gems when we
Right.
heed those messages way too loud.
Right. So we wanna be able to toot our own horn, but do it in particular ways that feels authentic to us, that doesn't sound obnoxious or bragging in its old sense. Oh, bragging. We've got to talk about bragging. Before
Absolutely.
we gotta talk because your name is Lisa Bragg, and you have so what I love in the book is how you not redefine it, you look into the definition of it and find something that's quite different than what we associate.
Yeah, thanks. It's originally to brag meant to shine and shimmer. And it's one of those strange words where they can't pin down exactly where it started. But in lots of different languages, it meant shine and shimmer. And then it also meant bravery. And I think that's how we moved along. And then we started saying, well, you know what? Those stories are too much. We don't want anyone talking too much about them because then they'll think, oh, they should get the credit and they should move up. And the leaders didn't want that. And then the people didn't want that. Right. So we moved into this. It's talking about your success with pride. And that's, you can find the dictionaries. They're shifting the meaning a little bit. And that's this era we live in now. You have to almost go back to what did it mean in a paper form? Because now things can shift online. But it, means talking about your success with pride. But my challenge is why not have some pride? And pride also means self-love. So why not have some? And this is not that icky self-aggrandizement. And that's where we get lost in the word. And I think that's where we're misunderstanding what the word really meant. And we're getting what self-aggrandizement, because that's back in my journalism days, we'd say that's a $5 word. It's a big word, self-aggrandizement, when bragging just is a catch-all for so many things. So self-aggrandizement is that, well, I'm better than you, and that puffery, that the ickiness and that put down that we associate with bragging, where bragging really means talking about your success with pride. The interesting thing with bragging too is that, well, who gets to define what's what? And that's what I find like with the word bragging rights. It's like, well, who gets to define what is too much or too little? And I want us to decide what that is. And that's where I think it's understanding context is a critical thing. That if if I don't own a yacht, but I'm in the yacht club and I'm taking all the pictures behind and you can see my yacht, that's where, and I'm using for people who are listening later, I'm using my air quotes. That's where you're going to feel that, oh, that's not genuine. That's not authentic, because it's not my yacht because I haven't left breadcrumbs along the way to show you that I'm into sailing or into boats at all. And
Right.
so you're not going to believe it. And that's where there's the disconnect when often it's with wealth, but it's all contextual, right? I'm not saying don't show off that you were in a private plane, but it's contextual. And that's where we sometimes feel that puffery piece.
Right. And I think it also, again, circles back to what we were talking about earlier about being okay with where you are and who you are and what you offer and what you bring, and knowing that it's good enough.
Yeah, it's
That
good enough.
everyone has their valuable perspective. I've been surprised, that I have some friends who I didn't know had certain status until after a couple of years of knowing them, because I knew them in a really different context. And I think that was a real gift for me, because then it allowed me, once I understood their status, and this was in academia, that I actually had something to offer them, even though I was just a stay-at-home mom at the time. I was also a performer. I performed my entire adult life, but that wasn't professionally. It was more avocation. But I felt comfortable with putting forth my ideas, and I know that I had impact on these people. I know that they valued me, and that was huge, because I think a lot of times when we meet people, we put them on pedestals if we think that there's some, at another level than us, and then we become self-conscious about what we can offer. And I think people, if I were to suggest something for people to adopt, is like, know that just by virtue of being alive and having your life experience, you have something to offer. You might have something that teaches any single person on this planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we put a lot into titles when titles are fleeting. Even in academia, things are fleeting. So we don't know how long things last. And so I think it's just showing up and being that person who shows up over and over again and showing up and being that listening ear. I think a lot of that does play into it. So, and there's so much that we offer that people don't realize, and we minimalize ourselves, and we're taught to do that. So it's really owning the space and feeling, getting those steps of courage as you go.
Well, let's talk about what to do when you actually have had the blessings or certain opportunities, and you may feel self-conscious about them, may have even a little guilt. You mentioned someone in your book who went to Harvard, and Harvard had a PhD from Harvard, and was concerned about sharing that because people might look at it as puffed up.
Yeah.
And yet they found a way of sharing that turned the kaleidoscope a little bit.
Yeah, that's the beautiful and awesome Andrea Wojnicki, and I definitely suggest people follow her. And she calls it, or I think it's everyone calls it, if you've gone to Harvard, which I haven't, but they call it the H bomb, because it does change how things are when you're in the room, because Harvard has such a notoriety, such a name in the world, and so people do recognize it internationally, and so they call it the H bomb. And so what she does to soften that is she says, well, I went to Harvard, but I did this research. And so you could even flip it saying, I did this research and I went to Harvard, right? So it's really making sure that you put the point of it there. It's the because, and that's what I talk about. It's because I went to Harvard and I did this, and not just saying, well, I went to Harvard, right? It's, well, why? Why does that matter? And having that adds to the story instead of just having that H bomb. So she'll talk about, and this is the research and the point of the research that I added to the conversation. And you have to add more to the story than, well, I'm a billionaire. And like, there's nothing, well, what are you doing to make the world better? Or what are you doing beyond that? So just having that one label doesn't mean anything. And that's where it's like the flashiness of it. But what does it mean? What is the depth to it? How does it help other people? When you do that and you say, well, here's how it's here to serve. So I went to Harvard and to do this research that's really going to change the world and how we think about business and how people do this other thing. And so that's really the critical point, is making sure that you have something to say because.
So how might you take that same example and do it in other contexts?
So I'll do it in winning an award, because that's where, or even trying to talk about your credibility. People will say, well, I won this award because, So you can say, I won this great award. I'm the top woman in business. I won it because, and then you can list some of the things but always putting yourself first. So putting the biggest part that you want people to hear first. In TV, we used to call, in in journalism in general, if you put it below, it's called burying the lead. What's the point of what you're trying to say? Say that right away and say, here's my brag. Here's what I want you to know. I won this award. And then you can say, because, or I did this great thing because of my team, but I did this. So it's me first. I went to Harvard because my family really supported me all the way through, so it's adding that. You can add the because to soften it if you need to. If you don't need to, then don't do it. But a lot of people who are just starting out, they need to have some other level of attribution first to deflect it a little bit. But I always caution people that we're trained so much to bury, that will do the Oscar speech that will say, thank you. And then I'm humbled, which I want everyone to eliminate that word from their vocabulary, but we'll do that. I want you to still be humble, but I want you to eliminate when you're writing it. I'm humbled, because it dismisses so many things from, when you're thanking somebody. It dismisses the judges, it dismisses your colleagues, it dismisses the peers that you were with trying to also win that, whatever it was. So you want to make sure that you really say genuinely that you're thankful and honored, but you are there that you won. Like, I'm a winner. I'm going to put that out there into the world. And yes, we know that we're built on the shoulder of giants. So if you need to, add that in. And many of us do, because we're just not, we need to have that because we know we are. And that so many people have come before us and paid our way. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to be talking about this today, because last week I released an episode about receiving attention, and not just attention, but receiving positive regard from other people. And how, so as you're speaking, I'm sitting here and I'm just kind of feeling the experience of expanding myself with the idea, oh, maybe I have received an award, and what that, standing in the wonderment of it and the wonderfulness of it, and how when there are two things that go on in my mind. One is that when we push it away, and I think you alluded to this a few minutes ago, we diminish the giver, because we're saying, well, it's not that great, whatever, this is not that important. But on the other hand, as someone who is looking for more speaking confidence, when you receive it and you let yourself be filled up, it becomes more of a peak experience where, if we're craving recognition, we're craving love, we're craving belonging, and yet sometimes that very thing that we seek, we push away out of habit or mores or, programming. And yes, take it in, receive it, let it fill you up, let it expand all your cells and tissues and feel good. I mean, this is our life, to feel good, when we can. There's so many things that don't. Let's enjoy it when they do.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that is so important to do that. But we just feel like we have to always say something right away and react to it, instead of allowing it to get into that cellular level. And I think it is definitely programming where we feel awkward about our successes, because so many of us are taught to say, well, what will they think? And that's part of I did international research for this, to develop the largest international research that moved beyond the research on bragging and self-promotion. In the past has been done on university students from the US. So 20 and 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds who want to fit in a world now that we also need to stand out. So it's that challenge of, what will they think? And that's, people all over the world identified. And I have a story of a woman who's in Mumbai who said, well, that's a big part of the culture, is like, what will they think? What will they think? And we do that because that's our relatives saying that over and over again. So we don't do things. So we stay in our lane. It's also that we don't want to come off that people are going to think something of us. And that's where we have this really this that we think that we're in control of other people. We can't control how people think about us, but we hold back talking about our successes because we're worried what other people will think. Meanwhile, they're not worried. They're not thinking anything of us at all. So by telling them your success, oh, okay, great. And then it's done. But we make it into a bigger thing than what it is often. And then we also think that we have to control how other people will receive our message, when in the end, they aren't going to receive it in a bad way. In my research, I found 85% of people actually want to hear you brag. They want to hear your stories of success. And then I think it was 12% of people would turn around and brag themselves, and 3% or 2%, whatever the math is now, would say that they would ignore you. And so, like, we're actually all cheering for you, but we're taught to be quiet, play small, wait till someone else sees us and talks about us. And that's impossible in this world that we live in today.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And it's very reassuring, especially, let's say in my case, I was attacked for shining too bright.
Yeah.
So, and I know that a lot of people have been in a position where they, it was dangerous for them to be put the center of attention and say, look at Linda, she's so good. Why aren't you like her? And then it brings up this loss of people's love and friendship. So it is a real fear. And it wasn't until I recognized that very late in my life, that was actually the part of the origins of me understanding how to get over my fear of speaking, was recognizing that origin, a trauma of mine in my family, and I know, a lot of people have their own traumas, but other people do also. Let's say they did well in school and they had jealous classmates. Others did well in school and had happy classmates for them. So it really all depends on your personal situation and what it is that you need to get to catch yourself up to the current. And that's why I say clear the past, so you can catch yourself up to where you are now, and then you can look towards the future. But you don't want to be dragging this past into the future, because it's heavy. It's a heavy weight to drag along.
Yeah. And it won't serve you. And then you're not serving other people. But so many of us had that, the eye rolling and oh, who do you think you are? And, what are you going to brag about it? That's what I got, I didn't realize how much my name meant to other people until I was like 13, 14 years old. And that it's an era where you don't want to stand out when you're that young. But when you're a high achiever and you just want to become smaller. And so that's where we're missing so many great voices, because they were taught to be quiet, play small, don't stand out, hide your success. And so many of us need to unpack that and then start to move forward. And if you're somebody who was successful and people are always cheering you on, you need to help everyone else along. And so that's where I have some tips in the book about how, as a leader, you can help other people to shine. Because I think that's really critical, is how do we not just say, hey, I'm in the spotlight, come find me, but also say, you know what, there's room for all of us here. So many great ideas need to be seen and heard. Let me help my team, without worrying about competition. Bring them in and all of us will shine. It's a halo effect that we all look good. So let's do it so that we can amplify each other.
Give some examples of what a team leader can do to help.
Yeah, I think one thing is, I don't have this as a line in the book, and it's like, really, there is no I in team, but there is I in credit. And we have to realize that credit goes where credit knows. So there's research done that I include in the book that talks about how, if Joe in the past has, really taken the team and they won something, but then Joe on the second project walks away and he's, just fetching the coffee, who will get the credit in the end on the second project? It's going to be Joe, because everyone knows that Joe did it the first time and Joe got the accolades. So Joe, even though he didn't barely participated in the second event, will still get the credit, because that's what people know. And so we need to leave indicators of success. So for leaders, ask your team to start building a brag book. Ask them to say, when you get a kudos from any other leaders or your teammates or from customers or clients, keep it, write it down, put it in a folder, whatever it is, so that we know. It's a gift to a leader for when an employee shows up, a team member shows up and says, here's all the great things I've done. Because as leaders, we don't remember all the things because we're on to the next fire. And so when you can come and say, here's all the great things I have, so allow your team to start building their brag book. And then you can also encourage them to talk about how they want to share credit on a project, because we don't want squabbling. We don't want people to come to us and say, well, she stole my credit. But in this research, we found that an overwhelming, I think it was 75% of people have said people have literally taken, of course, this is metaphorical now, but taken the work out of their done box and put it in their done box and put their label on it, put their name on it and erase them from it. And so that really hurts the workplace when people steal work and steal credit. And that's not talking about, well, I did this work in service of my leader. Yes, of course, she's going to take credit for it because that's what she needs to do. This is when a peer has stolen the work. It happens over and over and over again. So we have to help our teams understand, how do we want credit to flow, and that we want people to know that, hey, I did this and I contributed to this. So if you don't want to say, hey, I did this whole project by myself and I'm pretending to beat my hands on my chest, we don't want that. We want people to say, here's how I contributed. So that's a safe word, is here's my contribution. And when you put it that way, people feel more comfortable.
Yes. So yes, my team did this, and the way I contributed was I did this research, or I drafted the writing, or whatever it is that's specific. Is that what you're talking about?
You can do it like that. You can say, my team, you could say, I was part of a winning team. So I always I want I to come in earlier, because when we start too much with team, it does diminish. So, I was part of a team that won, a $500 million contract, and I contributed by, liaising with a client directly, or, so adding that contribution piece and picking something that you really want to be known for that you did, but also what is the piece that you want to be known for in the future? So maybe you didn't have the starring role, but you helped in a way that will show that you're positioning yourself for the starring role next time. So we don't want to overstretch, because I don't want you to be nervous and fake it till you make it, but I want you to also always position to where you want to go. So you can always think about, what's the connection to what I've done to the connection to where I want to go. And there's often a red thread through everything that we've done. You talked about how you were a performer before and how it's a red thread to your future. And you can make those connections along the way, especially with hindsight, and saying, well, here's what I've done. How do I think about, Linda or Lisa of the future with the things I've done in the past? And you can reconnect them in different ways. And when I was in broadcasting, I would hear it all the time. Oh, okay. Yeah, that does connect in the end, because people want to forecast where they're going instead of always worrying about where they've been.
Yeah. Well, I have to give some appreciation to your book, because I read it kind of quickly. I want to go back through it, but I already have some ideas, and I've done a lot of work around my own story and my origin stories, but I feel like it gave me some sense of what else I can do in order to contextualize where I am right now.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I really wanted to be of service. One of the greatest gifts that people have said to me is, I've talked about my successes because I hear you in my head. I hear you, Lisa, in my head. Like, that is one of the greatest gifts, where they've gone and done things that stretch them to show something. And then it's interesting because it's so easy to see it on social media. So they'll put something out and they'll say, Lisa, I did this because you're in my head, because of the book. And then I'll see the cascade, the avalanche of kudos and happiness and excitement for the people. And, back in broadcasting, then I would see people then go off and do more things. And that's what I want, is for all of the hidden gems and those who support hidden gems to then get them the opportunities that they already deserve, because you're already good. You're already great. Just you're not getting the opportunities that you already deserve. And that's what is the difference. It's not, hey, you're not good, fake it. You're already good. You deserve this. Let's get you seen and heard and out in the world so that you can do even more great things.
Yeah. Whenever I've posted about, a win, I've always gotten, wonderful, wonderful comments. And maybe if people didn't care, they just moved on, or they might have just liked it without a comment or whatever. But it is a lovely thing to get recognized or to have other people celebrate with
It
me.
it
And I like
absolutely,
being able to do that for others as well.
and I
So
think
you
it's
talk
the joy. Yeah.
yeah, I wanna talk about your point in the book where about how to adopt a sense of joy in others' good fortune, how to create that mindset because we may intellectually want to do that, and maybe there are times that it feels hard because there is that sense of jealousy. I want you to unpack that a little bit.
I know. You know what? It's just so easy to say, well, why not me? And, jealousy is the easier emotion. But when you can see all the what they're bringing to the table and have joy for them, so they call it, so other researchers have looked at it and said that people actually feel better when you can celebrate someone else, you'll actually feel better about yourself. So they call it shoy. It's the intentionally, I'm looking at the definition now, intentionally sharing the joy of someone relating a success story by showing interest and asking follow-up questions. So when we do
Mm.
that for someone, they say, hey, I won this award, or I was in Harvard Business Review. It's like, oh, I really want that too. But if I'm showing interest and asking them follow-up questions, they're going to then give me the breadcrumbs, the secrets, the how-tos, and I'm going to learn from that instead of saying, oh, well, like, wow, and walking away from it and dismissing it. They are going to tell me something by leaning in and asking them, some good supportive questions. They're going to give me those hints of how to do something. And maybe it's not exactly what I want to do, but then it's also something that I could say, hey, next person, this person did something great. I can connect you because you want that same greatness. They have that greatness. I can connect them. And then connecting people also amplifies and is a great part of self promotion. So when you can connect people who want the same, that's a great thing. We also have Freud and Freude, and that's, I think it's pretty much a made up word. There's some people say, no, no. And it's like, no, it sounds like a made up word, but it's the opposite to the Schadenfreude, where you take delight in someone else's downfall. And that word had really a big uprising for a while there, where people were really delighting in someone's misfortune. But what Freud and Freude is when you delight in someone else's fortune. And so what a way to be is saying, hey, you know what? I'm happy for your success. I'm happy you won that. I'm happy you did that. I'm happy for you. And that just allows us to, instead of being that competition mindset, that collaboration mindset. And I think that's a really critical piece that we have so many people to compete against now. How do we join together and collaborate and get more hidden voices, quieter voices out there to be seen and be heard? And so allowing to have this, I didn't make this word up, but it's bragitude. So it's your brag. Here's my success, but then it's also gratitude. So researchers built that one up, but it's brag plus gratitude. And then those two words, the listener actually appreciates it too. So, here's the example I use in the book. I'm getting a promotion thanks to your tips on how to navigate the new process. Like, that's a nice, easy one,
Mm.
but it's saying, like, I am not here all by myself. I want you to know what I'm talking about. I want you to know my brag, but then I'm going to also bring you into it. So, hey, awesome leader who, gave me a recommendation. Of course, I'm going to thank you. Or here's that other person who's maybe not on our team all the time. We're going to say, is supporting us. I mean, here's what I did. And it's because I read your article on LinkedIn or watched the show with you, Linda, that, I'm going to have a bragitude. I'm going to give a brag. I won this. And then I'm also going to be grateful to the world. And generosity, gratefulness is generous, right? So when we're grateful, that's an easy way to self-promote. And I think most people know that, but giving kudos to other people all the time does help with your self-promotion because it reflects great back on you.
But after you've said your piece.
Always, that's the thing. Because we will bury it as an Oscar speech. We will bury or not even get to our success. Like,
Right.
you won this, you did this. It's, you know what? It's not all these people. You are the one who brought it to fruition. And yes, we are built based on other people. So what is it that you won? Hey, I'm so happy I did this. And then it's also all of the great people that are behind me. But too many of us bury ourselves. and we don't give ourselves credit.
And with your help, we will be changing that whole framework so that we can talk about ourselves, our work, and our successes with purposeful self-promotion. Lisa, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I love these ideas of gratitude, all the reframes that you helped us envision in our minds so that we can come to this place with more ease and feel more delight in it. So where can people find you?
Well, on social media, I'm Lisa Bragg or that Lisa Bragg, depending on the handle, but Lisa Bragg, and you can find me pretty much everywhere. And you can also go to my website, which is easily enough, lisabragg.com.
And that's with 2 G's.
2 G's. Yes, 2 G's. So
Mhm.
yeah. So that's why it fits so well with bragging rights. Having that name, it's the name I was born with. So, and then I also want to give our listeners, if you want to come on, I have some tools that I want to give away for free. So lisabragg.com/listener love, and you can go there and find that information and pick it up.
Yeah, and that's listener-love if you are listening, and it'll also be in the show notes. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone who has come on today live or watched the replay has found some useful help here in feeling more confident in the way you speak about yourself. And may we all shine and may we all lift each other up. Until the next episode, I wish you all delight in the limelight.